It was nearly midnight on a sweltering Friday, August the 28th of 2020. The desert heat still clung to the Las Vegas Valley like a second skin as a young couple pulled into the parking lot of the Longhorn Casino. Security cameras captured everything. Two young people stepping out of a truck, full of energy, full of life, with the whole night stretched out ahead of them. Nobody watching that footage could have imagined what the next few hours would bring. Nobody could have guessed that by sunrise, one of them would be gone forever, and the other would be on the run. 22-year-old Leslie Palacios and 25-year-old Eric Rangel Ibarra walked through the doors of the Longhorn Casino together, heading straight for the Chuckwagon restaurant inside. They moved past the slot machines, past the low hum of late-night gamblers, into the warmth of a restaurant still serving food well past the witching hour. This was Las Vegas, after all. The city never sleeps. The night was still very, very young. Leslie was wearing her mask, following the pandemic protocols of the day. Eric, apparently, had forgotten to put his back on. That small detail would matter enormously later. His face clear and unobstructed, fully visible to every surveillance camera in that parking lot, that restaurant, those streets. He had no idea how important that forgotten mask would become. The two settled in for dinner. They ordered drinks with their meal, several of them, and by all accounts, everything seemed completely normal, comfortable, even. They ate, they talked, they laughed, and when they finally walked back out of the restaurant about an hour and a half later, Leslie was carrying a bag of leftovers. Eric was walking close by her side, familiar and relaxed, every bit the trusted companion she believed him to be. There was nothing in his demeanor, nothing in his posture, nothing at all that would have raised any alarm. They returned to Eric's truck. She went around to the passenger side. He climbed in behind the wheel, and then they drove off into the neon-lit Las Vegas night, looking for their next stop. Because this is Las Vegas. And for a lot of folks, that dinner would have been enough. But the city runs around the clock, and the couple was young, and the night was far from over. Their next destination was Putter's Bar and Grill on East Charleston Boulevard. They arrived around 2 in the morning, about 20 minutes after leaving the Longhorn parking lot. More drinks, more time together. The staff who worked that evening could not say exactly what time the couple left, only that they had been there, had been drinking, and had eventually moved on. From there, the two made their way to a location of the Bourbon Street Sports Bar, where surveillance would later show them together again, beers in hand, taking shots of tequila, completely at ease with one another. If you think this is just a normal Las Vegas night out, you would be right. On the surface, everything looked perfectly fine, but something was already building beneath that surface, something dark and irreversible that Leslie had no way of seeing coming. Finally, well after the bars had thinned out and the city had moved into that quiet hush before dawn, Eric and Leslie called it a night. The cameras in front of the home where Eric lived caught them arriving at around 5 in the morning on Saturday, August the 29th. And that is where everything changed. Leslie was struggling. The hours of drinking had taken their toll, and she was clearly having difficulty walking. Eric helped her from the truck, holding her up, guiding her steps. To anyone watching, it might have looked like a considerate young man taking care of his date. He walked her through the door and helped her upstairs to his bedroom. The home belonged to Eric's father, Jose Rangel, and his mother. Eric's younger sister lived there as well. Jose had actually been up early that morning, working in the garage, making preparations for a church event he planned to attend with his wife later that day. He was not fully aware yet that the couple had come home. No one in that house really saw them come in. And then something went terribly wrong. Number 1. Something happened in that bedroom in the early morning hours of August the 29th that would shake an entire community to its core. Something that could never be taken back, never be undone, and never to be fully explained. By Saturday afternoon, Leslie's mother, Araceli Palacio, and her sister, Nayeli Palacio, were worried. Leslie had not come home. She was not answering her phone. She was not responding to texts. They had been trying to reach her all morning, and there was simply nothing. No response, no explanation, no reassurance that she was okay. The last message Nayeli had received from her sister had come in during the night. It was a text from Leslie's phone number that said simply, "I need to tell you some shit." Nayeli had immediately written back, asking what had happened. She never received a reply. That text, that unfinished thought, that dangling moment of urgency, would haunt the family for a very long time. The family contacted the Las Vegas Metro Police Department. They told officers that Leslie had gone out on a date the night before and had never come home. They explained that they had been calling and texting for hours without a single response. And then the police told them something that made an already terrifying situation even worse. They were told they needed to wait 24 hours before Leslie could officially be declared missing. This outdated policy had once served a practical purpose. Back in the days before cell phones, back when people might simply wander home after a rough night without any way to communicate along the way. The waiting period was meant to allow time for people to find their way back before law enforcement resources were committed. But as technology changed everything about how people stay connected, that policy became a dangerous relic. Almost every department in the country had already abandoned it by this point. In Las Vegas in 2020, it was still being applied to a family that already knew, in their bones, that something was desperately wrong. They waited, but they did not wait quietly. The family tried calling Jose Rangel, Eric's father, to see if he knew anything about what the young couple had gotten into. He never answered. They tried calling Eric's sister. No answer there either. They drove to the Rangel home. No one came to the door. An hour later, they returned to try again, and this time they spotted Eric's mother and sister loading furniture into the back of a truck, but they were unable to get any information from them. No explanations, no acknowledgement, nothing. The following day, with Leslie still completely unreachable, the family went back to the police. This time, a missing persons case was officially opened. Investigators were told everything the family knew, which was not much, but it was something. They knew she had gone on a date with a young man named Eric Rangel Ibarra. They knew his home address, and they knew that the families had been neighbors for nearly 15 years. Meanwhile, at another desk somewhere else in that same police department, a separate missing persons report was being filed on August the 31st. This one was for two men, a father and son, Jose Rangel and his son Eric Rangel Ibarra. It took until September the 1st for investigators to connect the two cases. Once they did, things moved fast. A BOLO, or Be on the Lookout report, went out immediately. Officers headed to both the Palacios and Rangel homes, which were located only a few blocks apart, canvassing the area around the Rangel property on Tipper Avenue. Investigators identified a security camera mounted in a position that looked directly down onto the family's property. They obtained access to that footage and began scrolling back through time, looking for answers. What they found made this something far worse than a missing persons case. What prosecutors would later describe in court, and what news stations would broadcast with portions deliberately blurred due to the graphic nature of the content, was footage from the morning of August the 29th, showing Eric helping Leslie get out of his truck and into the house. That part was already known. But about an hour after that, the same camera captured something chilling. Eric and another man, believed to be his father.
Investigators say video from the morning of August 29th shows 25-year-old Eric Rangel Ibarra helping.
Minutes later, the truck drove away, and Jose could be seen left behind, hosing down the gravel walkway outside the front of the house. A nursing student, just months away from graduation, had walked into that house alive, and now two men were transporting her body away in the dark. Two missing persons cases immediately became one homicide investigation. Warrants were obtained and a forensic team moved through the Rangel home room by room, documenting everything they found. What they encountered inside told a story of frantic, desperate cleanup. On the living room couch, investigators found a pair of blue latex gloves. More gloves and an array of cleaning supplies were found in the dining room area. In the kitchen, a mop bucket contained a stained cleaning cloth. The mop head itself showed signs of a dark substance. Someone had been trying very hard to erase what had happened here. Upstairs, Eric's bedroom looked as though it had been turned inside out. Items had been moved around in ways that made no organic sense. The fitted sheet had been stripped from the mattress and was gone entirely. On the mattress itself, there were dark stains. A preferred customer card registered in Eric's name was found in the room. A shirt hanging on a hanger, one of Eric's, had drops of blood on it. His wallet was still in the room, empty of cash but containing all of his identification. Investigators moved to the bathroom and found 2 blood spatters on the floor, which were sampled for analysis. The source of those spatters would remain undetermined. As investigators continued their work inside the Rangel home, arrest warrants were issued for both Eric and his father Jose. Local media outlets broadcast the announcement, showing photos of both men, and even including images of what they might look like wearing surgical masks, since nearly everyone had been wearing them throughout that phase of the pandemic. The alerts went out, the community was watching, and someone came forward. A friend of Eric's had seen the news and had information that investigators needed to hear. This man explained that he had known Eric for about 5 or 6 years. The most recent time they had seen each other in person had been weeks before the date with Leslie, when Eric had shown up at a restaurant where the friend was eating. Eric had been visibly intoxicated. He sat down, looked at his friend, and asked him straight out whether they were friends and whether he would do him a favor sometime if Eric ever needed one. It was an odd, uncomfortable moment, and the friend had basically humored him, figuring Eric was just drunk and would forget about it. Eric left. The friend moved on. Then, on the morning of Saturday the 29th, His phone rang. It was a number he did not recognize. He answered. It was Eric, and Eric immediately reminded him of that promise. He was calling in the favor. Eric said he needed someone to bring him gasoline. He could not get it himself. He could not go anywhere near a camera. The friend was confused. He asked Eric why, and Eric explained that he was in Utah, approximately 125 miles north of Las Vegas. He was calling from a burner phone because he had ditched his regular one. And then, before his friend could make any sense of what was happening, Eric told him why he needed someone to bring gas from so far away. Because I killed a bitch.
Eric told him. He then repeated it when his friend said that he didn't believe him. I'm for real. I killed a bitch.
The friend wanted nothing to do with what he was hearing. He told Eric he had to go pick up his daughter. He could not help. And then he told Eric something important before hanging up. He told him that Eric had made a serious mistake by saying what he had just said out loud. Eric immediately ended the call. The friend went to the police the moment he saw the news reports. As for Eric, it appears he turned around and headed back toward Las Vegas. He met back up with his father, and then, moving with urgency and leaving almost nothing behind them, the two of them disappeared. No debit card transactions, no cell phone pings, no credible witness sightings called in. They moved through the world like shadows, gathering whatever cash they could carry and heading south, crossing into California, and then crossing the border into Mexico by that same evening. Jose's wife and daughters were left behind without any explanation whatsoever. Not a note, not a phone call, nothing. They vanished like a pair of ghosts. The search for Leslie continued. Law enforcement, tribal police, and search and rescue teams fanned out across the desert landscape surrounding Las Vegas, covering enormous stretches of the brutal Mojave terrain in August heat that would have been dangerous even without a mission driving them forward. It took until September the 9th. Members of the Moapa Tribal Police, Red Rock Search and Rescue, and investigators from the Las Vegas Metro Police Department discovered Leslie's remains in the Moapa Valley, near the Valley of Fire State Park, roughly 60 miles from Las Vegas. The location was a few miles east of Interstate 15, off the Valley of Fire Highway, about 25 feet down a dirt road. Her body had been concealed behind a bush in a wash, hidden from the road and from view. What they found there reflected the brutality not just of what had been done to her, but of how she had been discarded. The desert heat in late August is punishing beyond description. Her body had suffered terribly from the high temperatures over the intervening days, and had sustained considerable damage from insects as well. Initial identification was made by matching the clothing Leslie had been seen wearing on their date night, captured across multiple surveillance cameras throughout the evening, a striped top and blue jeans, to what was found at the scene. But Leslie was found without pants. Her underwear had not been put back on correctly. Investigators noted that her thong-style underwear had been pulled back onto her body, as though the thong portion were the waistband, placed on her by someone who had not taken care and had not paid attention. Her jeans were found separately in a nearby bush. The body was transported to the state laboratory for autopsy and forensic analysis. Due to the severity of the exposure and the extreme conditions of the Nevada desert in late summer, medical examiners were unable to conclusively determine the exact cause of death. The day after her body was discovered, Leslie's family, her friends, and members of the community gathered together for a memorial service. It was a heartbreaking moment that made permanent what everyone had feared since that first unanswered text. Leslie was not coming home. The nursing student, who had been just months from walking across a graduation stage, who had spent her last night out laughing and eating leftovers and staying out too late in the city she called home, was gone, and the man responsible was still out there. Number 4. Passed. Then months. Eric Rangel Ibarra was nowhere to be found. His father, Jose, had also disappeared completely. There were no credible reports, no sightings, no tips that led anywhere. The case was featured on nationally broadcast television programs dedicated to fugitives and unsolved crimes. Nothing brought Eric in. And then, on January the 19th of 2021, just over 3 months after Leslie's body had been found, something changed. Jose Rangel walked up to the United States and Mexico border crossing near San Diego, California, at the San Ysidro crossing, and surrendered himself to authorities. Officials from the San Ysidro Border Patrol Station arrested him immediately and contacted law enforcement in Las Vegas. Jose waived his Miranda rights. He waived any fight against extradition. He said he wanted to come home to his family. He had one piece of information about his son. He said the two of them had split up somewhere in Mexico and that he had not heard from Eric in months. Investigators described Jose as cooperative from the very beginning of their interviews, but his initial account of events was notably watered down, minimizing his own role in what had taken place that morning. Once confronted with the security camera footage that showed him clearly and unmistakably, Jose changed his story. He described waking up early that morning and working in the garage, planning for the church event he was going to attend with his wife later. He heard Eric and Leslie come through the door and stumble up the stairs. He did not go up. About 30 minutes later, Eric came back down the stairs. He was shirtless. He was dragging Leslie's body behind him on a bedsheet. Eric told his father she had overdosed and died. What Jose described next was a scene of complete panic. Eric was not thinking clearly. He was telling his father they had to do something. They had to get the body out of the house before Jose's wife and daughters came downstairs and became involved in whatever this was. Jose said he looked at Leslie as they moved her. He said he could see no obvious injuries on her. There was no blood. There was no vomit. She was only partially dressed, with no pants, and her underwear was on incorrectly. He helped Eric get her into the truck. He grabbed the water hose and began spraying down the gravel outside as his son drove away with her body in the back. Jose told investigators that in that moment he was not consciously trying to destroy evidence. He said he was stunned, and spraying the driveway was simply something to do with his hands while his mind tried to catch up to what his eyes had just seen. He believed Eric was heading toward Utah with the intention of disposing of the body somewhere out in that wilderness. Distraught and not knowing what else to do, Jose walked to a nearby home where his other daughter lived. He needed to talk to someone. But not long after he arrived, Eric showed up there too. Jose had not expected to see him. Eric was not calm. He was erratic and volatile, shouting about what he might do to himself or to Jose, warning that people might be coming after the family. The situation was spiraling out of control in real time. Jose made the decision that would define the next several months of his life. He chose to flee with his son. The two of them drove back to the Wrangell home, gathered every bit of cash they could find, climbed back into the car, and drove toward California. By that evening, they had crossed the border into Mexico. During the entire drive, Jose said Eric refused to talk about what had actually happened in that bedroom. All he would say was that Leslie had overdosed on narcotics and that he had been drinking heavily that night. That was all Jose was ever given. Number 5. In the end, Jose Wrangell struck a plea deal with prosecutors. He pleaded guilty to destroying evidence and to being an accessory to murder, both charged as misdemeanors under Nevada law at the time. He had spent 205 days in the Clark County Detention Center by the time he came to trial. He was sentenced to a total of 2 years in jail, with the 205 days already served counting against that sentence as time already completed. The reaction from the community was immediate and fierce. The charges, the plea, the sentencing, all of it drew sharp condemnation. People were outraged that helping cover up a young woman's death, that dragging her body through a doorway and loading it into a truck and spraying down the evidence outside could be treated as a misdemeanor. Chief Deputy District Attorney John Giordano made his feelings on the matter plainly known to the press, telling reporters that the Nevada legislature needed to look hard at those laws. He made clear that what had been done to Leslie, treating her body like something disposable, like something to be thrown away in the desert and forgotten, should not be something the law treated as minor. Leslie's family also spoke. Her mother and sister gave emotional statements to the press, speaking about what Leslie had meant to them, about the person she had been, about the fact that she had been just months from finishing nursing school when her life was taken. They demanded that the entire family face real accountability. They made clear that they would not rest, that they would not stop pushing, that they would not accept a world in which the person responsible for what happened to their daughter and sister was still walking free somewhere beyond the reach of American law. Jose would ultimately serve only 8 additional months in jail beyond the time he had already completed before being released. He had taken courses during his incarceration that, under Nevada state policy, allowed for a reduction in the remaining sentence. He walked out of jail a free man. His son remained a fugitive. The family of Leslie Palacios continued making public pleas for any information that might lead to Eric's arrest. Her sister spoke candidly and emotionally to media outlets, saying that not a single day went by without thinking about Leslie, that everything was a reminder of her, and that there was no hiding anymore, that the world had gotten too small and too connected for a person to simply disappear forever. She made a promise on behalf of the whole family. They were not going to stop, not until they had justice. As of the time this case was documented for broadcast, Eric Wrangell Ibarra remained a fugitive. He is believed to be somewhere in Mexico, with unconfirmed reports placing him at various points in Chihuahua State and Durango State. He has so far managed to avoid law enforcement in both countries. He has been the subject of multiple nationally televised programs focused on wanted fugitives, and still, he remains out there. The case against him is built on surveillance footage, physical evidence recovered from the Wrangell home, witness testimony from his own friend who received that phone call, and the statements of his own father. The question of whether Leslie died from an overdose, as Eric claimed in that phone call from Utah, or whether something more deliberate took place in that bedroom, remains one that only Eric can fully answer. The condition of the body when it was recovered made a definitive cause of death impossible to establish, and the only person who was in that room with Leslie that night has never faced a courtroom. What the evidence makes clear is this: a 22-year-old woman went on a date and never came home. Her body was dumped in the desert, hidden behind a bush, left to the desert heat and the insects, stripped of her clothing, and not even properly redressed. Her family was left to search for her, to sit through an agonizing and unnecessary waiting period before police would even open a case, and then to watch as the one man who had already been charged and convicted walked free after less than 14 months total. And the man ultimately responsible for it all is still out there. If you have any information regarding the whereabouts of Eric Rangel Ibarra, you are urged to contact the Nevada State Police by calling 755-6842-644. Any information, no matter how small it might seem, could be the piece that finally brings this case to its conclusion and gives the Palacios family the justice they have been fighting for every single day since that August night. Leslie's sister said it best: "You cannot hide forever. Someday, somewhere, justice catches up, and her family intends to make sure of it." Because a young woman who was just months
like there's not a day, that goes by that we don't. Everything reminds us to bring yourself in, because there's no way of hiding out anymore. You can't hide forever and just, pay for what you did, because we're never.
The night she walked into that house on Tipper Avenue, Leslie Palacios had her whole life ahead of her. It is long past time for the man who ended it to come in from the shadows and face what he has done. The family is not going to stop, and neither should the rest of us.